evening. We will begin the City Council meeting Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. Please silence your cell phones and anything else that could be disturbing this evening. And we will call the meeting in order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Ding.
Present.
Councilmember Lowe.
Here.
Vice Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Here.
Councilmember Wellander.
Yes.
There's nothing to report. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. I'll second it.
Roll call.
Councilmember Ding.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowe.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wellander.
Yes.
Mayor Gurney.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. All right, this is the part of the agenda where we can take comments from the public, and remember that there is a 3-minute limit, and we will be enforcing that. You're free to comment on anything that's not on the agenda this evening, so keep that in mind. Thank you. Anybody like to speak?
Hello, good evening. Thank you. My name is Lexi Bakar. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to speak with you tonight. I'm here this evening to talk to you a little bit about why we and millions of people around the world are standing up for Gaza. First, the volume and speed and scale of the destruction is unprecedented. 1 in 3 of the more than 32,000 people killed have been children. Tens of thousands more have suffered severe lifelong injuries, including amputations. More children were killed in Gaza in 4 months than in 4 years of war globally. This war is a war on children. It is a war on their childhood and their future, said UNRWA Commissioner. 140 journalists and 350 medical staff have been killed, and the UN says the Israeli attack that killed 7 World Central Kitchen staff this week brings the number of aid workers killed to 196. Secondly, this is being live streamed on our phones. Social media serves as a diary for people in Gaza to communicate with the outside world and to share their stories. They are begging us for help, but instead the U.S. sends more weapons. Third, these weapons are so destructive, their sole purpose is to take out entire blocks. There has been a steady stream of munitions to Israel, with the U.S. quietly sending 100 arms transfers since October 7th, just under the limit to allow passage without congressional permission. Despite growing disapproval among Americans, more than 56% of Americans don't agree with what's happening, and the passage of a UN ceasefire resolution, we continue to send more arms. The latest package this week includes 1,800 Mk-84 2,000-pound bombs and approximately 500 Mk-82 500-pound bombs. These are called dumb bombs, meaning they are not guided and are extremely inaccurate, carrying a greater risk of inflicting civilian casualties. Mark Erlasco, a former war crimes investigator for the United Nations, says the revelation that almost half of all bombs dropped on Gaza by Israel are unguided dumb bombs completely undercuts their claim of minimizing civilian harm. We implore you to pass a ceasefire resolution. This is not about religion. This is about human rights. We are Sonoma Valley for Ceasefire, part of Sonoma County for Palestine. We hope that the City Council will meet with us and we can talk about ways to have peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. You snooze, you lose.
Sorry about that, Robert. Joseph Roseiker, 1110 Loma Court.
Many people think that city councils or boards of supervisors should stick to local issues that affect their communities, that passing resolutions about national or world events is of no use and wastes time and resources. But please remember that each council or board is the voice of its community. For months, I have watched and listened to the horrors of this unjust war in Gaza. Over 30,000 civilians killed, all homes, businesses, hospitals destroyed. Those that have survived living in camps, wounded, sick, and starving. And yesterday we see those trying to bring food and relief are murdered in this unjust war too. Our national government contributes to this massacre and suffering by supporting the Israeli government and funding and weapons of war. The UN and other countries have condemned this slaughter and injustice and demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire. They demand help and aid for those that are suffering, while our national government does the opposite. If each little town and each city stood up and passed a resolution for an immediate ceasefire, massive humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza, and creating an independent state for the Palestinian people, then maybe our national leaders would hear us, and they would realize that the majority of Americans want this. So think about what people are saying today, and remember you speak for us, and that the world is bigger than Sonoma, and sometimes we need to think beyond the day-to-day work of local government and speak with one voice for justice and to end this horror and suffering. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Dillner.
Good evening, Mayor Gurney and Council. Robert Demler, 1st Street West, Sonoma. A local question or two. I was asked at Wednesday's Sonoma League board meeting if there had been a review and assessment published about last year's goals that were set according to timelines of 3 months, 6 months, etc. I couldn't answer it. Has there been one published? No?
We can't answer that. We can't respond to your comments because it's not on the agenda. And
Well, I'm
but I'm
happy
sure
because it's not
somebody
on
at
the
staff can
agenda.
follow up with you after the meeting.
Okay. And the other one, I'd like to know where we are in the budget process. I've totally lost. So if
Okay.
somebody can enlighten me, thank you very much.
We can do that. Thank you.
Good evening. John Donnelly from Sonoma. For too many months now, I, along with millions of others, have called, emailed, and joined demonstrations, raising our voices, urging the Biden administration, our senators, our representatives, to demand that the United States call for an immediate ceasefire and a lasting humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of hostages. Obviously, we need to raise our voices even more. And that's why I'm here tonight, to ask you to do that with me and all the others. We need more voices to stop this genocidal war against the Palestinians. So I'm asking you to strengthen and raise our voices by adopting a Sonoma resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza, as so many other cities have already done. We must stop the Biden administration from continuing to outsource U.S. foreign policy, and indeed our nation's soul, as Biden likes to talk about, to Netanyahu, now obviously a war criminal, as the Zionist government continues to weaponize famine and to indiscriminately bomb hospitals, ambulances, world-centric workers, and other casualties of this war that we've all heard about. Just yesterday, Netanyahu even widened this war to Syria, bombing a consulate, another international war crime. It is not too late for our city to adopt a resolution that amplifies our voices demanding into this genocidal madness. Perhaps we could let ourselves think of any Gaza city as another sister city of Sonoma, a city being bombed to smithereens with U.S. bombs, a Gaza city that cries out for our support and our solidarity to end this madness. As Edmund Burke once put it, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world is that good men and women do nothing. So instead of doing nothing, I ask that you at least do something, pass a city resolution for a ceasefire, and please put this on the agenda as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ariel Mihik. I live at 38 West Thompson Avenue. Thank you for allowing public comment. I'm here to say free Palestine. And by that, I mean a permanent ceasefire, an end to the occupation, the destruction of Zionist propaganda, and granting full sovereignty and the right of return to all Palestinians. Witnessing a genocide, war crime after war crime, forced starvation, targeted killings at hospitals and mosques, journalists, and aid workers. We're now at a place where 30% of children under 2 are acutely malnourished. The atrocities continue to pile up, and no one is holding Israel accountable. In fact, we continue to send weapons and U.S. dollars to perpetuate this terror. This must stop. We must use our voices to put an end to this terror. Judaism and Zionism are not the same thing. Being anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitic. We must abolish the Zionist, fascist, white supremacy that is laying waste to tens of thousands of innocent human beings in Gaza. We must do this now. We must do this as the people of Sonoma County. We need a ceasefire resolution now. Our neighboring towns, our school boards, human rights commissions, labor organizers, youth groups have all endorsed this message already. They have done it clearly. They have done it loudly. There should be nothing more pressing than putting this on the agenda for Sonoma immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Barakat. I'm a Sonoma resident. I want to thank you so much for all the work that you do and for hearing us again, time and time again. As we and as a community and the city meet this complex moment together in history, I come to this body and I try to bring my whole self. And sometimes that looks like exhaustion and anxiety and overwhelm. But my sincere hope is to be able to have meaningful conversations in my community and with this community about how to address this urgent humanitarian crisis. We're in rich collaboration with Rabbi Steve Finley, and our group is working with Reverend Lindsay and the Kenwood Parish of Emmaus. And those are communities that are seeking to be ceasefire congregations. In the past 6 months, groups from all over the world, from all jurisdictions, large and small, have passed resolutions aimed at federal elected officials to get them to permanently support a ceasefire, release of all hostages, and the direct efforts to urgently address long-term solutions and humanitarian assistance. Of the many folks showing up in really remarkable ways, the labor movement continues to show up in incredible solidarity. Labor for Palestine is a global labor movement rooted in the U.S. Anti-war solidarity struggle. It contains hundreds of member unions that call for a ceasefire. They refuse to build weapons and transport these weapons to Israel. The AFL-CIO, representing 12 million Americans, with a membership, often with steadfast support of Israel, have issued a ceasefire statement. The United Auto Workers Union, the SEIU, Unite Here, the National Labor Network, Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 21, the Oakland Education Association have all passed ceasefire resolutions. The North Bay Labor Council, representing 70 unions with a membership of more than 70,000 in Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Lake counties, in January approved a ceasefire resolution. On top of that, more than 100 local U.S. unions and 6 international ones have also joined. Our North Bay unions are leading the way for us to follow in their footsteps. I ask that you please meet with us. I ask that you please meet minds with us. I ask that you please pass a ceasefire resolution to protect all lives in this conflict.
Thank you. Next.
Hello. My name is Casper, and I am here once again to ask you to please add a ceasefire resolution to the agenda so that we may have an open dialogue with you folks regarding the genocide in Gaza. As you know, the city of Sonoma has a commendable record of being on the right side of international conflicts, the peaceful side, specifically in anti-war movements during Vietnam. This is a record that both the governing body and citizens of Sonoma applaud and praise, and yet we resist maintaining the same attitude during the current humanitarian crisis unfolding in Palestine. Sonoma has 7 sister cities, namely Aswan, Egypt, Pátzcuaro, Mexico, and Penglai, China, all countries that are in vehement favor of ending the bombardment on Gaza. I wonder how it is possible for us to maintain an honest relationship with our sister cities when we are fundamentally opposing their prioritization of human life. I wonder why we are not embarrassed by how negligent we are being and how poorly this reflects on us. Sonoma, the town of peace lovers who cannot condemn inactive genocide. As I'm sure you know, there are currently protests happening in Israel itself, admonishing these unprecedented attacks that we are all witnessing. If you refuse to listen to Palestinians, you should feel comfortable hearing from Israeli citizens themselves that this war is traumatizing and severely negatively impacting them. By the Israeli government's denial to cement a hostage exchange in favor of massacring Palestinian men, women, and children, Israeli family members of current or former hostages are suffering the knowledge that their loved ones are at imminent risk of death every single day that bombs continue to drop with the aim of killing Palestinians. As regional war looks more and more likely as this genocide continues, and Lebanon and Syria are continuously implicated as new targets for war, we must speak up and halt U.S. support and halt the potential for further U.S. involvement. Just 4 days ago, 4 UN members were injured by an exploding shell while patrolling the border in southern Lebanon. Just yesterday, Israel bombed Syria. Tensions are escalating, not just in Palestine and Israel, not just in the Middle East, but all over the world. We are rapidly implicating ourselves in a much larger conflict that I don't think any of us want to be a part of. I beg of you, for the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have lost their lives and the thousands that will soon die, represent your constituents. You can clearly see that our numbers attending these meetings are growing, and we will not stop showing up. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Celine. I'm a senior at Sonoma Valley High School. And as a young student and community member in the Valley, I've noticed generational disparities in the issues scrutinized by our local government. And my purpose today is to emphasize that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza poses both a global and local environmental catastrophe. During the first 2 months of Israel's bombing of Gaza alone, 281,315 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions were released into our atmosphere. The effects of this war will be catastrophic for the future of all of the young residents of this world, including Sonomans, as we have to come to terms with the ongoing climate crisis, both as a city and nation. Our federal tax dollars are funding this environmental catastrophe and mass loss of human life. I hope Sonoma will stand on the right side of history in face of the global humanitarian and environmental crisis. I understand that the city of Sonoma is a pioneer in climate action. I plead you to extend this action to recognize the global and local impact of this unprecedented release of carbon dioxide will have. Commissioners, I plead you to put a ceasefire resolution on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council on items not on the agenda? Come forward, please state your name and.
Hello, my name is Julie. Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Julian Mendez. I live on 990 Glenwood Drive. I'm a senior at Sonoma Valley High School, and I also plead you all to put a ceasefire resolution on the agenda, and I would simply like to read a quote from Hassan Maslah, a displaced Palestinian civilian in Gaza. Quote, "Instead of telling us that they will build a port to help us, stop providing the weapons they throw at us. All these American weapons are killing our kids and killing us wherever we go. We don't need aid from them. We need them to stop the killing, stop the death. Wherever we go, we find death." End quote. Hassan is a person you will likely never meet. He's a person I've never met. And you will likely forget that name, but I implore you to keep people like Hassan in mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to address the council?
Hello, City Council, Mayor, City staff, and all of the public. My name is Jeremy. I've lived in this valley for 2.5 years and this county for nearly 5. I understand that the situation can be both complex and difficult to parse through, but that is why we're here to work with you all to get a ceasefire resolution passed. I'm sure everyone in this room doesn't want more bloodshed and violence in Palestine, and a permanent ceasefire is the first step in that process. Now, I wish to address comments that such a resolution would be divisive. I believe that a prospect of working together to build a more peaceful world for tomorrow builds a stronger community that actually knows and provides safety for each other. Let us all put an end to this. Let us all together find an amicable solution for a permanent ceasefire in Palestine. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Seth Donnelly, a Sonoma resident, high school teacher. Don't worry, I'm not reading this whole thing. But I was reflecting, I think what so many other folks have said is exactly what I would want to say. They said it better. But I was thinking this is now the week 6 since coming before the city council. It started 6 weeks ago for me coming to the city council. I'm sure others before then. And to think about what's happened in those 6 weeks since, including just this last week, the systematic destruction of the most advanced medical center in Gaza, the Al-Shifa Hospital. I'm not sure where your information sources come from. But if you look at virtually every independent journalist on the ground, every UN agency, every major human rights organization from Human Rights Watch to Amnesty International, the evidence of genocide is overwhelming. The evidence of systematic massacres in Al-Shifa Hospital is overwhelming. Eyewitness and video footage of people being buried alive by bulldozers while handcuffed and blindfolded is overwhelming. Those 6 weeks, I mentioned my students met with Representative Thompson and urged him to vote against more military aid, and then a vote just came out last week where Thompson and others voted for the $1.2 trillion budget, with the largest military budget in world history passed, with $3 billion more in military aid to Israel. Last week there was all the advanced 2,000-pound bombs shipped, the 500-pound bomb shipped as well. And what that says to me is not that it's futile for us to do what we're doing, but for us to do it fast. And as Maria mentioned, our little group, our growing group, actually I shouldn't say little, but in terms of the Sonoma Valley, this village, we've been meeting with faith leaders, we've been meeting with labor leaders. I believe we represent the majority concern in Sonoma. And so my question is, how can we get on the agenda so it's not just public comment? Let's move this, let's get it done. Every week brings forth more overwhelming evidence of genocide, and it does matter when small communities stand up and actually break to silence. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the council on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and move on with our regular agenda. Next item is meeting dedications. Council, are there any meeting dedications tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. Council members' reports and comments. Anybody have a report?
Yes.
Mr. Ding.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I want to report on the 3 meetings I was attending during the last month. The first one is March 7th, Sonoma Clean Power. I represented the fellow Patricia because she was out of the town. As you know, this organization, as they try to use a new renewal and resources, work with the PG&E. During this meeting, and we passed the Sonoma Clean Power Authority's legislative policy in the platform, and also we approved Sonoma Clean Power Authority's community support policy and agricultural community needs assessment final report. I think this is very important, especially for those farmers and the young farmers, they really they need support and new resources, enhance their business. This is number one. Number two, that is the March 18th. That is my favorite one. That is the Sonoma Valley Groundwater and Sustainability and the Agency. And during the visitor meeting, I report our ad hoc and committees and the result for the investigating, as because the service and the provider Western used and increase the budget for the next years, next and fifth years, and also wanted to make amendment for current years and then the budget. The amount is significant. So then the board member and suggest we should set up the committee, ad hoc committee, to make the the investigation and see what's going on. So the three the members for this committee, and we work very closely to review all the calculations or the supporting documents saying how, why, and you need this kind of service and feed amount increased. And one important thing is we look at the hourly rate. That is $271. It is a little bit surprise us because we look at it nationwide and statewide. It's not this kind of high, and 3 times or even 4 times. So then we ask a lot of the questions for the service provider, and then we understand. Finally, and we appreciated the service and also the professional, the dedication in this industry for the decades. And as you know, they have the special talent, they have the special ability, bring over $3.1 million and grants from the California Department of Water Resources. We very much appreciate. So basically this is not like an investigation, just like open the dialogue. So everybody happy, and in the end, and we didn't change any budget adjustment. And also I want to say thank you to the council member Ron or Wellander, also attended our subcommittees in the meeting, and also Michael Berger. Because this is very important. Right now, we feel very comfortable and confident to approve the amendment agreement, and also we approve preliminary budget for the coming years. That is my second report. The third report is the March 21st. I was attending Cal City's Revenue and Taxation Committees in the meeting. This is the first in-person meeting, and I met and the city councils and the mayors across the state. We discussed a lot of the important issues, especially we got the most updated for the state of the budget crisis, because $38 billion in the short, what's going on. And because a lot of the, miscalculations, a lot of the, some of the accounts receivable or the tax return and the filing extension. But right now, we have already seen and this kind of gap getting smaller and smaller. That is very good. And we didn't pass any important policy or the resolution during this meeting. That is all my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Farrar-Rivas.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for attending the meeting for me, Councilmember Ding. So I attended the Alcalde reception for our new Alcalde, Wayne Shockey, which was fabulous, along with other members of the council. And then there was no Sonoma Valley Citizens Advocacy Commission meeting this last month, so I have no report on that. But you may all remember, you probably don't, but several months ago, I was part of a commission to identify a consultant for the County of Sonoma's Human Services Department to develop a local aging and disability action plan, and that's happening through a grant of the Department on Aging. And so we now have Stacy Morales, who's the ED of the Vintage House, who is going to be representing the city of Sonoma on that advisory commission for that consultant. So the good news about that is there will be a focus on Sonoma Valley. I think the two main areas of focus will be Santa Rosa and Sonoma Valley, and I will be getting reports from Ms. Morales as this goes on, and I'll be bringing those reports back to you. I also did yesterday, I attend a meeting with the youth members of Sonoma Valley for ceasefire. Having been a young activist at one point, I recognize the courage it takes for young people to be involved in activism and an issue like this, because it's not easy to raise your voice when the situation is complicated. I had a lovely conversation with them. I think it was a very good conversation. I learned a lot. I think that, I didn't speak a lot. I mostly wanted to learn from them, but they were very respectful, and I really appreciated that opportunity to have a real conversation with them. I think that their voices, the youth voices of Sonoma, especially in regard to this issue, and in this time of one of the things that I learned of the internet, that so many of our young people are so affected by this because it's in their face every single day. And so it was a very, very positive meeting. So I definitely wanted to report on that. And then tomorrow I'll be attending the Sonoma Clean Power, and for their May 1st meeting, I'll report back on that. And then last but not least, I am very, very excited to be appointing Norma Fogelberg to our Climate Action Commission. And so she has been playing a role behind the scenes with our commission, doing work in regards to supporting community engagement, actually helping them when they were creating their plan. They have a strategic action plan, their climate action plan. And so she is her educational background is Bachelor of Arts from Antioch University. She came from Pratt University Environmental Design, and she's in the process of completing her UC Berkeley MBA. She's also had been part of the Climate Reality Project, a conference that I'm going to be attending next week, and did significant work in the community of Atherton in regard to helping them and supporting them with their resident engagement process that they were doing around emergency fireworks evacuations. So I'm just really excited to be able to announce that tonight. So there we go.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Wellander?
Yes. I have just one meeting that I attended, and that was last week, and it was the board for the Sonoma County Homeless Coalition, and it was a fairly lengthy meeting, and it principally was reviewing the recommendations by the Finance Evaluation Committee on how to distribute the funds that have been given to our group. I'm happy to say that it was in the millions, but it was not enough. But the good news for Sonoma Valley is it appears that although we only had one item, only one application for the Sonoma Valley of $125,000, it appears that it's going to stay in some fashion in Sonoma, although the applicant, due to complications of not being fully funded, may withdraw. But I was given the assurance that that money would be dedicated and would stay in the valley. And I'm now that I'm beginning to get my sea legs, I'm highly motivated to be much more aggressive in the next cycle of funding to hopefully see more money coming to our much-deserved valley. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lowe.
Yes, we had a LAFCO meeting today, looking at what's going to happen in the future with the staffing at LAFCO. It's a very small staff, and when one or both of the staff people decide it's time to retire, it really, we need to make a plan. So that's what we did there. I am opening along with the mayor tomorrow, the roundabout, which will be at 116 and 121, not 121 and 121, which I think got people thinking, wow, it is a roundabout. It's both streets in the same place. So anyway, we'll be there for that in the rain, and look forward to seeing how it helps with the traffic situation down Arnold Drive. And then I'm pleased to be once again in the trash and fashion, walking the runway, making a total fool of myself for y'all to see and enjoy. And I will be modeling something. I'll give you a little sneak preview that has to do with cutting red tape, as it were. So I thought that would be sort of an ironic thing for someone from the city council to do. But I'm looking forward to it, and all of the other Earth Day celebrations, and the Barbie exhibit as well. You should look at Fashion, Trash, and Barbie, and all of the other things at the community center, which it's all for fun, but it's also points out something very important to all of us, and that's how much waste there is out there, how we better be better conservators of the land and the things that we use, and so forth. And I immediately called the trash service and asked them to please send me the smallest trash can possible going forward, so I can make a personal statement about how I intend not to clutter the universe with all of these things. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And everybody kind of stole my thunder here.
Well, that's what you get for going last.
But I did get to facilitate the passing of the alcalde cane to our new alcalde. And it was very well attended, a fun evening. And I will be putting Mr. Shockey to work immediately. So, all right, let's move on. City manager comments and announcements.
All right, thank you. Just a couple of updates. The speed table that was installed on East Napa and 5th Street is complete. That was installed on Monday, and it's active now. So we're starting to receive feedback. So if you have thoughts and comments, please let us know. You also start to see bike racks appear in the plaza within the next couple weeks. So we will be putting bike racks around various locations. This is just the first phase, so we'll take a look at it, see how they work, see how the public likes these type of bike racks, and then we'll look at it, adding more where appropriate. And the timely question about the budget was perfect. I did want to give an update on where we are in the budget process. The budget process for 24-25 is kicking off. We are starting that process. There's an item on council tonight to address some of the support to get that done, but we will be reaching out to the public on public needs over the next couple of weeks. We'll be holding study sessions in May, ultimately with an adoption at the end of June. So the timing is going to move pretty quickly, but you'll start to hear more and more about the budget over the next few weeks as you start to see information roll out. And then just one other follow-up item is council goals. The budget will be driven primarily by the council goals. So the council goals are extremely important in development of this budget. As part of the goal setting, the first part of that presentation was to review last year's goals and the status of those goals and what we've accomplished, and then rolled into the new goals. So if you're interested in learning more about the council goals, we have a website that has that information on it. You can visit the website, the presentation's on there, or you can reach out to the city manager's office and we can assist you as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next is city attorney comments, but I have a secret that he has none. So we'll move ahead.
I will table my comments to the next meeting.
Very good. All right, and so item number 6, presentations. And the first presentation is a proclamation celebrating Sebastiani Theater's 90th anniversary. Roger, you don't look 90, but okay. Actually, this is, it's an honor for me to do this because I've been a supporter of Sebastiani Theater for 30 years. And the work that they've done, I've performed on their stage in Witchy Poo. I could go on, but I'm not going to. So, Roger, this proclamation celebrates Sebastiani Theater's 90th anniversary. And there are a number of whereases, but I think everybody that is familiar with the Sebastiani Theater knows that there's a lot of fun and good that comes out of that. But let's go through a couple of them. Samuel Sebastiani constructed the theater in 1933 and officially opened its doors on April 7th, 1934, featuring the film Fugitive Lovers, starring Robert Montgomery, with admissions set at a modest 30 cents. And whereas the Sebastiani Theater witnessed an unforgettable event in 1941, hosting a parade of celebrities including Charmaine London, Ronald Reagan, Jane Wyman, Edward G. Robinson, and John Garfield for the premiere of Seawolf, a Jack London story marking historic moment in Sonoma. And in 1986, Roger Roten commenced his association with the theater, and by 1992 assumed control of the business through a lease agreement with the city of Sonoma, beginning a long stewardship along with his wife Diana in preserving the historic gym within our town and square. And of course, we've had the International Film Festival, initiated in 1997, continues to use the theater as one of their premier venues. Sebastiani Theater holds a significant place in the film history of animation with Pixar and the world premiere of Toy Story and A Bug's Life in 1998. And for 40 years, the Sebastiani Theater has played a crucial role in youth development and education in the Sonoma Valley, offering various children's programs and productions, including performing art camps, Sonoma Conservatory of Dance Ballet, Backyard Kids Theater, Witchy Poo, Halloween shows, and much, much more. And throughout the 90-year history, the theater has served as a cultural hub, providing a diverse mix of film screenings, live productions, and has served as a venue for community gatherings, weddings, private events, and beyond. So therefore, I, John Gurney, Mayor of the City of Sonoma, with my fellow council members, do hereby officially recognize and celebrate the Sebastiani Theater on the occasion of their 90th anniversary, honoring its rich history, cultural contributions, and unwavering dedication to our community.
Well, first of all, my name is Roger Roten, and I'd just like to thank the City Council and the City of Sonoma for being such a great partner for all these years to help keep this lovely theater going. And I'd like to thank Samuele Sebastiani to have the foresight to build such a wonderful theater for this community. And I have been involved with it for over 38 years, and I have had the opportunity and the pleasure to watch the incredible impact that has had on so many people and so many young people, and watch them grow within the theater. And so it's been quite an honor to do that. But we want to look to the future too. So as much as it's already done in the past, we're now with the Sebastiani Theater Foundation, we're looking at ways to renovate and to expand the theater to make it really a first-class performing arts and film center. So that's our next goal, because we want this to continue on into another 100 years and for future generations. And I just know what impact it's had on the people that I've been associated with, and all the other people that have kept it open for all these years. And so on behalf of everyone that's involved with the theater, we just would like to say thank all of you, because you all have been a great support to us, and we really do appreciate that. And so we want to continue on and make it bigger and better. And we do have a grand celebration Saturday night at the theater, a big variety show with a fundraising event that's going to be a lot of fun. And then on Sunday, if you want to see Fugitive Lovers, you can come to the theater on Sunday for 30 cents. You can watch Fugitive Lovers. And if you want to watch Wizard of Oz, we'll also play that day. That's another 30s film that came out, I think, in 34. And so that will be playing that day also. So we're part of the celebration of its 90 years. And then the following Sunday, we have a great magic show with Mario, the Maker Magician. And so something great for all the kids to come to. And we look forward to seeing everyone come to the theater, because we think it's a great place to be. It's a place for people to come together as a community and to share and experiences together. And we want to keep on going. So thank you very much. We appreciate it greatly for all that you guys do too.
And if
All right,
people
thank you.
haven't had a chance to sit on them yet, this will be an opportunity to sit on the new chairs.
That's
The
right.
new
Actually,
seats.
we had all the chairs recushioned and covered, and that was through the Sonoma International Film Festival. That made a generous donation to make that happen. And so, yes, it is much more comfortable there. Something that everybody's always complained about.
All right. Well, now I'm excited. Are there still tickets available for Saturday's event?
There's a few left. And so we hope to sell it out. We're getting real close, and we've got quite a lineup. It's going to be a great variety show. And so
All right.
it's gonna
I
be
encourage everybody to support the theater.
fun. All right. Thank you.
All right. Is the Wizard of Oz 30 cents too?
No, it's cost you $10.
No. Okay. All right. Thank you, Roger. All right. Moving on to the next presentation. By names list, BNL program update. Take it away, Lisa.
No worries. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. But good evening, Mayor Gurney and City Council members. Tonight we have a presentation from Homes First. As you all probably remember, last May we passed, the City of Sonoma adopted a 3-year strategic action plan to end homelessness. And one of the key components of the strategic plan the city adopted was the regional approach to end homelessness. The city, with funding support from the county, entered into an agreement with the city of Petaluma to share a by names list manager position. Homes First, who's here tonight, is the service provider that is responsible for the coordination and management of the Sonoma Valley's by names list. I'd like to introduce you now to Hunter Scott and Marissa Marquez, who will be providing background on the process, as well as the progress report on how the process is currently working here in Sonoma Valley. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Hello. Can you all hear me? You probably hear this all the time, but I'm quite nervous, so please excuse any stumbles. My name's Hunter Scott. My title is Coordinated Entry Director. Coordinated Entry is a central system for people who are experiencing homelessness to access permanent housing resources in Sonoma County. I supervise the by names list process and by names list manager. Marissa Marquez is going to come over and speak in a sec. So the way that we're sort of thinking about doing this is I'll talk about the background of how this came to be, and then Marissa will dive into the data. Just quickly to start out, a little bit about Home First as an agency. We are over 40 years old, about 500 employees, over 40 programs. Many of those programs are based in Santa Clara County. About 2 years ago, we took on the contract to operate the Sonoma County Coordinated Entry System, as well as the Labatt Landing shelter site in Roanoke Park. I've worked for Home First for 5 years, but I am from Sonoma County. I have very fond memories in city of Sonoma as well, and so this is very near and dear to my heart to work on this work that I love in the community that I'm from. So Just to dive in. So a little bit about the history. I will explain in a bit what a by names list is, but these kinds of meetings have arisen organically in many subregions over the last few years around Sonoma County. So North County has been doing it for several years, so has Roanoke Park. Around the same time, Sonoma Valley and South County started this process under the leadership of Andrew Henning, who I believe you all funded to provide some consulting services. So what these meetings are is they facilitate a local coordinated response to homelessness to help local regions identify gaps and trends for this issue. This approach breaks up an issue that's often viewed countywide into more manageable pieces. So the aim is to develop concrete action plans for each person experiencing homelessness towards permanent housing. And to be able to talk about those people by name. So we know by name who is homeless in our communities. So next slide, thank you. So, the goal is to figure out how many people are currently homeless. You may have heard of the point in time count. That's a thing that happens every January. You're probably waiting for those numbers. Our goal is to get to a more accurate picture than that, right, of who's actually experiencing this crisis in our community today. And again, it just helps us identify what their needs are and coordinate those services. This kind of structure is used in over 100 communities, probably more at this point, communities in the United States. It's really becoming recognized as a best practice to approach this issue. You can see here there's a map. It's a little small. Sorry, I can send a little bit of a bigger version. But this kind of splits up the subregions. You can see Sonoma Valley is the pink sort of region in the lower right corner. In fall of 2022, various homeless service leaders in each of these subregions came together. The people that were already doing this, were interested in doing this, came together to try to create a sort of a standard manual of how we would approach this work across the whole county. This effort was led by the county as well as Andrew Henning. Moving on. About a year later, last year, Home First, so that's where we work, took on the contract to lead this effort in Sonoma Valley. And this contract funds 40% of all of Marissa, and the rest is shared with the city of Petaluma. And then tying this to outreach, which Councilmember Wellander spoke to earlier, more recently we've been working on standards to align street outreach, which I'll explain what that is in a sec, to this model, to ensure that we have not just coordination of all the existing service providers, but actual people going out in the street and working with people experiencing homelessness who are dedicated to each subregion as opposed to sort of a county-wide, throw paint at a wall approach. So we've been working on some standards that will be approved by the coalition board, or hopefully approved by the coalition board that Councilmember Wellander sits on. And then Councilmember Wellander also spoke to what just happened, which is that some funding was allocated for street outreach in Sonoma Valley, and that may be us, it may not. I'm happy to speak to that later if y'all are interested. And so I just wanted to kind of split up understanding of the roles that we're talking about here. So next slide. Thank you. So a by names list coordinator, they're responsible for developing relationships with providers, right? So coordinating all the different providers, having a meeting once a week or every 2 weeks, making sure those action plans I talked about for people who are experiencing homelessness exist, analyzing the data that you're about to see, providing TA, technical assistance, consulting services to the different providers in the region, especially if those providers are new, like Homeless Action Sonoma in our community, to get them up to speed and plugged into the broader county efforts, as well as I mentioned, getting plugged into those county-wide efforts. So there's a lot of sort of county-wide versions of the meetings that we hold in Sonoma Valley that Marissa and I go to and sort of try to represent the needs of the Valley and the individuals who are experiencing homelessness here. And so this is what we call a system leader role, so more of an admin role. And then we have street outreach. And so this is what we've been advocating for, and this is what this person's or this role's responsibility is to develop relationships with the people actually experiencing homelessness. So their direct services role. One of the things that we're hoping to move the whole county towards, and this will, as I mentioned, will come before the coalition board, is to have street outreach. So people who are doing services on the street with people experiencing homelessness have distinct caseloads. So people that are that they are focused on and trying to move them into housing instead of, again, just sort of a random handing out socks approach, but really action oriented. And socks are great. I want to clarify that, but really just that plus a really action oriented approach towards housing. So that's the role of street outreach. Again, direct services. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marissa, and then I can come back for questions as needed.
Thank you for having me today, Mayor, Council, community. My name is Marissa Marquez, and I am the BNL coordinator for Sonoma Valley as well as Petaluma. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our meetings. So currently for the Sonoma Valley, we meet twice a month for 90 minutes. Now we have representatives who have various services and expertise throughout the Sonoma Valley. So this includes Sonoma Overnight Services, we have Haas, Fish, we have Sheriff, PD, Fire, Home First. We have Sonoma Valley Health Center, FS Global, the County of Sonoma, and actually recently HANA Center has also joined us. So we are growing in our providers. One of the things that we have needs for from our providers, so we can basically develop the process and make it as pinpointed and to the individuals we're trying to serve as possible, is data from all partners. We know we are working with a shared community. So we have providers who are overlapping services and making sure that we are capturing everyone who's experiencing homelessness in our community. We want improved data fidelity. We want to know what is going on in our community. So some of the things that we've noticed as barriers to the fidelity of our numbers include just provider staff turnover, losing those relationships with those individuals who are in the community and having somebody new, timeliness and real-time data. So we currently report out quarterly, which you'll see some of the slides from our last quarter with some of the additional information from this quarter. However, if that period closes and then we notice like, oh, we just heard that 3 individuals housed self-resolved, that was following the quarter, even though they were housed in that quarter. So that might be an example of why the timeliness of the data we receive impacts our numbers. It's also second-hand or third-hand knowledge. So this is really speaking to the providers, knowing the individuals, knowing what's going on. And if it's not documented in the system, which I pull from, it's really relying on those providers to have that. And additional services, including outreach, which Hunter mentioned before. So how do people get to our BNL? So first off, the service providers bringing the names forward to myself. This could be any of those groups, anyone who is identifying someone who is experiencing homelessness at that time. We also have the Homeless Information Management System. We have certain reports we can pull that will tell me that this individual is living in a shelter which resides in Sonoma, or a Sonoma County, or Sonoma Valley, provider assessed this individual and inputted their information in the coordinated entry. Also, we have Fire and Sheriff, who regularly do a great job of setting names of the individuals they're interacting with in the community. So then the care providers can coordinate around those individuals as they're being identified. So, how many people are on the Sonoma Valley BNL? So, if we look to our most recent data, which is the end of March, we currently have 108 individuals who are identified and working with providers in our community. We do not have data for one of the quarters, which we did not have a dedicated BNL provider. So we're going to go over some distinctions in homelessness. Because this is important with how our services are really pinpointed and prioritized. So we have a distinction between literal homelessness and being basically precariously housed. So first off, literal homelessness is actually those individuals who are living on the streets. We see them living in our public spaces, or they could be living at a vehicle or in a shelter. We also have the individuals who are precariously housed, meaning that they are maybe at risk of being literal homeless. So they might be couch surfing, they might be staying in overcrowded housing, was something that we heard from some of the providers for certain communities, spending a night or two at a hotel, but not having a consistent home to reside in. So within the literal homelessness category, we have two categories. We have chronic homelessness and non-chronic homelessness. So long-term homelessness, we have a federal definition, which is 12 or more months within a 3-year period of being unhoused. Additionally, having a mental health, or developmental disability. We have non-chronic homelessness is basically having those shorter periods of being unhoused, as well as not meeting the criteria, the health criteria. Those individuals tend to have more factors related to changes in job, economics, or relational issues that contribute to them being unhoused for a period of time. So one of the things is we are prioritizing the most vulnerable. So we will focus our efforts on that, the chronic homelessness, but we are still capturing and coordinating for the greater group as well. So our numbers. So the last 2 quarters, which I have been with the Sonoma Valley, we can see that our chronic homelessness is greater than our non-chronic homelessness. So we're looking at that blue. So in our quarter, which ended at the end of December, we calculate about 95 individuals in the Sonoma Valley met that definition for chronic homelessness. And then in this quarter, we are projecting that number to be 72. So it's still the greater portion of those who are unhoused and working with our community providers. So talking a little bit about how we get folks into permanent housing. This is federally funded permanent housing. So these are what we call our buckets. So basically we start off by identifying the individual, identifying that there's an individual in our community who is living on the streets, who is unhoused. When we build that relationship during that initial part, we can assess them and get them into something called coordinated entry. Now, this assessment gives us an idea of vulnerability factors, and which also helps us understand what type of housing would be best for this individual. Once assessed, that person may be placed, depending on the assessment score, in the priority group. Again, we're prioritizing the most vulnerable individuals. So if someone comes up with a higher assessment score, they're basically getting ahead in that line because they have a higher need. They have more risk factors. And by the time we're getting them in line for housing, they're in that navigation period where we're getting documentation together, getting them resources, setting them up with services to hopefully help them thrive once housed. So, engagement, again, this is the close at our 2023. We will be pulling the rest of the numbers shortly. So at the end of 2023, we had 45% of individuals were in that assessed category. We still had about 50% of just identified, so that building rapport, not currently in community entry quite yet. We had 1% was in navigation towards housing, and the 4% was basically in line for that housing. So, projecting housing needs, looking at what the resources we have and the prioritization scores we have. If you can see a color copy, this is a little bit easier. But if you look at that 1% and that 12% on the graph, that is the folks who are currently in coordinate entry and in Sonoma Valley who are likely to receive that federal funding housing through coordinated entry. So this really speaks to that gap of we have this very large 76% group who are unlikely to receive housing through that particular resource. Now, we are working with providers on alternative ways to enter housing with some trainings, but this is kind of what speaks to that need of just not having enough housing resources for that need. And primarily that would be permanent supportive housing. It's housing with some assistance, with some case management, linking to healthcare, mental health care, and other resources as well. And this is some information at the end of December, how people exited the BNL. We talked about how people entered. Now, how did they exit? So we had, the great thing was 48% of the exits in the Sonoma Valley BNL were related to housing. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. We had a housing resource open up, and we had some coordination with. So this really shows what happens when that housing resource opens up. I do want to say this is not all housing through coordinated entry. Sometimes some interventions along the way help our individuals that we're trying to serve self-resolve housing or meet other needs. So this isn't only through that community entry. And then another 48% were related to not being seen for 90 days, really falling out of touch with those service providers. Now, we do know at times people travel from community to community, but this is kind of the reason why you'd advocate for additional outreach services, so they can really maintain those relationships, build those relationships, and sustain them to keep them basically having somebody with them to understand their needs, so we can coordinate those care services. So some of the progress we have seen. One is this increased coordination across agencies. So this is huge because we have agencies which might have certain foci and might not know, oh, there's this resource over here, this resource, or I also work with this individual. I need this person to come in for an appointment. Has anyone seen them? So that coordination occurs in real time. We're slowly increasing the representation in our BNL meetings. We know there's a lot of partners who we have in those meetings. We also know there's a lot of partners that we're trying to bring into those meetings so we can have this more holistic approach of those. Improve representation of homelessness in the BNL itself. Again, getting all that data from all the service providers, having everyone bring the names forward. So we're not missing folks. If they're not on the list, we can't coordinate care surrounding them. And I just want to mention, we had 29 individuals, that were permanently housed that last quarter. We'll get to those new numbers coming soon. And any questions? If you want to pop up as well.
First question is, if you had a wish list and wanted to challenge the city of Sonoma to make their next contribution to addressing homelessness in our area, what would be that one wish?
Oh, one. That's so many.
Yeah. Did you want to start?
We'll see if they're the same. Assuming we get outreach through the county, hopefully that's taken care of, or at least partially taken care of. At that point, we need more permanent housing resources.
Okay.
Many communities have created subsidies with some money for services to create some more outflow, and we've seen that's what works. So.
Okay, fair enough. This may not be a great question, but I am curious because I'm asked all the time. You provide a great service. A lot of money is spent in Sonoma County for addressing this. Could you give us an idea of how effective we've been in terms of, again, we've been investing millions each year, and from your lens, because it's much greater than mine right now, how would you grade us?
For the whole county,
Mm-hmm.
we had as far as I remember, 20% decrease between the last 2 point in times, right? So that was pandemic money in my mind, is having an effect. I'm a little bit scared of what's going to happen, maybe not this year, but next year, as that we're seeing that money contract, as you saw right at the coalition meeting. We know how to end homelessness. It just takes money, and that money to be used effectively. And so we saw that.
And I guess I'm being more specific. Do you think we're being effective as far as the way we're spending money? Because the public will approach me and say, we're spending millions on homelessness. What are we getting out of it? And again, I'm just simply wanting to be smart when I can answer that.
Yeah, I can give you some facts later. If I remember correctly, 900 people exited our coordinated entry system last year. Into permanent housing, right? So when we hear, oh, it's not doing anything, well, that's 900 people who are homeless who are now housed. I want to confirm that number for you, and I can email the staff. But But yes, I mean, I think it is being used effectively. The reason people still see people on the street is because there's not enough of it, right? There's not enough funding.
And my last question is specific to our Sonoma Valley and our residents. Are they fairly sedentary, or are you seeing movement in and out of the Sonoma Valley?
We do see a lot of movement in and out of Sonoma Valley. So, for example, you might see somebody who family shelters are outside of Sonoma Valley. So, someone who might enter CE, family, and I will see them in some of the other shelters since I'm following up with that. You'll also see people change locations. You have individuals who go between cities, and since we're doing this regionally, someone might be spend half the time here and half the time here. So sometimes I have to make sure that are they working with those Sonoma Valley, providers, and not just Santa Rosa.
Well, thank you, and also thank you for your work.
I have a question. What is the relationship between the home of the first and the county's COC, but right now is in a county homeless in the coalition? They are your client, or what kind of authority you can share, or please.
Yeah, I mean, I want to emphasize the county is the COC lead, as we call it, right? They are also the coordinated entry lead. And they fund us, Home First, as a subcontractor to operate the coordinated entry system. That's the current relationship, at least on paper, we have with the county. I mean, I also sit on various committees and that sort of thing, but the county is the lead for ending homelessness.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also in the county, they provide day-to-day these kind of services. For example, in the community development department, they focus on homeless, housing, hunting, arrange, and the shelters. How you can work with them, or you work together, or you? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Community Development Commission does fund some services. So does Department of Health Services. There was a big move that happened about a year ago for the lead agency. And we work very closely with certainly Department of Health Services. There's a representative of the county who comes to MRSA's meetings often, and we go to theirs. There's actually they lead a countywide version of the meetings that MRSA leads, where we talk about things like who's going between the different subregions and how to make sure they're covered when they end up in Santa Rosa and vice versa.
That's great. My last question is about Home First. You mentioned about your main office in the Santa Clara County. I wonder if by name the list is kind of the California, the brand name, or how connected with the outside and then the Bay. You share the information, or you have a nationwide database or something like that.
Is the question about the relationship between the by names list and Home First?
Yes.
Okay. So Home First is the agency that we work for, right? And so the by names list is what we would call a program. It's not really, it's more because we don't provide services through the by names list, but that's what we would sort of consider it. So we also operate lots of programs like shelters, right, in various regions. So this is just one of the programs that we offer.
All right. Good enough. Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Lowe.
Thank you. So I'm referring to this chart here. I don't know if there's a page number. It said engagement at the close of 2023. So my question is whether or not there's any way that we can tell from this histogram if they're the same people.
Oh,
was that your? So we have 61 people, and let's say that's October, and then you have a percentage in the next bar. I just want to know if there's any way to present that data so that we know how many of these people are carrying over as individuals, how many new people are entering, how many people have just gone somewhere else. anyway, that's my question. Apparently that's Ms. Farrar-Rivas' question as well.
Sure. So what you're looking at is really a point in time capture of the BNL at the close of the last quarter. So that was the end of December. So at that time, we take the BNL data, because it's very fluid, right? It changes from day to day. I'm in that multiple hours a day to update it. And we're seeing where are our folks at right now. So those on the BNL, where are they in those process buckets that's moving them towards housing? So those top numbers that are smaller, the priority navigation, those are already those folks that are en route to housing. And the bigger, broader numbers are those who've been assessed, meaning that they are worked with a provider, they sat down and did assessment, they've been given an assessment score, so we know about where they fall in that line of prioritization. And then the other factor is identified, that I know this individual, I'm starting to build rapport with this individual, building trust so that they're willing to do an assessment. So we're getting names from multiple providers, meaning that someone from the sheriff is not going to assess an individual, but if they name the person, tell us where they're at, we can then coordinate outreach. So it's really increasing that our orange area is ideal.
Right. I get that, but maybe I should refer to this chart with all the blue ones on it, because it goes 98, 127, then we didn't do it, then 136, 108. What I'd like to know are these 136 people, are the 108 contained within the 136? Are they still there? In other words, what portion of these are, apples to apples, if you were, the same people? Because we could have 136 different people, then we have 108, and then perhaps they've gone somewhere we don't know, they've migrated to a different town or whatever, and then we have 108 people. So I'd like to know, where this doesn't help me with this, to know that.
Understood. Inflow and outflow. And that is actually something we want to present in this next quarter. We do have our outflow. So if we look at our numbers from on the slide where we had 29, 1. Yes.
The next slide.
We will learn and do better. That's what we can do. So that's our outflow. I don't think we captured on these slides how many new folks have entered, but that is something that we can report out on.
But if you ask us day to day, she can tell you this is how many people are new today.
Right.
It's a big Excel sheet basically.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you do, and I think that it would be helpful, when you look at data, to sort of see how it segments, so that we know that if there's that of these 100 people, for example, 70 of them in the last count were also here, and now they're here again. Of these 70 people, now they're in this count, they're now in, they've left, or now they've found shelter or whatever. Because it's hard to know if the counts, just by this. I'm sure you have this data. It's just I can't see in these, in these pictures. I can't figure it out from there, obviously. So that would be helpful. Perhaps a subsequent presentation just to show exactly, follow the people, because that's what the presentation's about. It's about by names list, right? Okay. It is about individuals. So, and it's hard to tell from these charts. And then I just a point that you're presenting before the Sonoma City Council, but this is not necessarily a City of Sonoma presentation, and people do ask, Mr. Wellander asked, how many of these people are living in the City of Sonoma? Not that it matters to me at all. It does not. I think this is all of our obligation to house people, but people do ask that, and it also is. It's important to note that this is another example of how the City of Sonoma is really the only place for the valley that people can come in a shared services type of situation to learn about what's happening. Because at the county level, you know, you're looking at the whole county. And here, so if you are not like in the city limits, as it were, this is, you know, air things there, you're still in the Sonoma Valley. We still care about you. We still want to know how we can help. But it would be nice to know also, just for, you know, the management of the city, you know, the places that we need to address, whether it is in the plaza. I know there's creeks around here. You know, what can we do within the city limits to even make it better? But this is an example of how the city of Sonoma is really more than the city of Sonoma. It really is the Sonoma Valley, and you can't make you know, there is no delineation for that, and so I thank you for that.
And I think we could include that.
Yeah, I do appreciate the feedback.
The second thing we'll have to problem solve, but yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely include the first item, and then we can work towards the second item, especially with some of our partners. Yeah, thank you for the feedback.
Okay, yeah. Ms. Farrar-Rivas.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest in regard to that, because that was the same thing. It's like, how do you track that? Is maybe there could be the folks that are in this section have been in this section this number of quarters. And I know, you know, and that, so if you did that for each of the categories, then we could start to see what the flow is and what's happening. And, you know, this percentage are brand new people, and this percentage are people that have been here for a long time. Or maybe not a long time, but because we don't have really much data yet. We've only got, that was the quarter you showed us, that's the first quarter we had data. So
Correct.
we're really working with a very small amount of data at this point, but it'd be helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And just one quick question for me. The by names list, as I understand it, is the individual needs to cooperate with your request? No?
Not to be identified. So that can speak to when we look at those categories of someone who has been identified by a provider, by police services. They may not be in coordinated entry yet. It's that building that relationship to hopefully get them into coordinated entry to see if they qualify for like the federally funded housing that we do have available. So if police bring a name forward, we put that on the list. If fire, and we triage outreach to those folks, because we know if like fire and police are bringing these people forward, let's send outreach where this individual is. So that's
okay. So
how it
you
works.
have the name, but if they refuse services, do you track that as well?
We just keep talking about building rapport, keeping track of locations, where folks are, and trying to mend those, like build those bridges and keep them strong so we can. And we do see that. We see folks are like, yeah, okay, let me get assessed. Let me at least accept a meal. Let me go to the warmings, all these different things.
Okay, thank you.
Do you still using those kind of method, the spot and counting how many you go to the buildings, you go to the creek, you could under the bridge? Do you still using this kind of technique to count? Because I know some of the homeless people, they claim that we are not homeless. They don't want to be connected with you in the system. So now how you can connect them, how to count it? Because if we counted them more, definitely we can get more in the resources you just mentioned. But some people, they really don't want to.
You're correct. So I think we have two different ways that we're monitoring this. So we mentioned the point in time count, which happens once a year, where really on the same day, around the same time, people go out to the community and they assess maybe people they think who are living unhoused currently. And then this is hopefully giving us a more accurate representation, because these are folks that are interacting with all different providers that someone might interact with when they're unhoused. So healthcare, police, fire, actual direct service providers for the unhoused community as well. They tell me if they're under the bridge or under here, or this is the location. We're building upon that, getting more locations.
And that's why we're so excited to have outreach and more outreach in some kind of form in the valleys, because just a heads up, I do expect the numbers to go up, right? Because we'll have more bodies out there working with people, right? And so that's going to be really exciting, but also just heads up around that.
Okay. Yeah. I got it.
All right, nothing further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you didn't seem nervous. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
All right, moving ahead, we have a consent calendar, item number 7. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council or staff request specific items to be removed for separate action. Is there a motion to approve said consent calendar?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Do we want to
Public comment?
If there's if nothing's being pulled, then
All right,
public comment.
nothing's being pulled. Public comment on the consent calendar. Seeing none. Is there a motion? And let's hear it again.
I'll second it. Oh,
One more time.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I second the consent calendar.
There's an echo in here, obviously. All right, roll call.
Councilmember Ding,
Aye.
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Farrar-Rivas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wellander,
Yes.
Mayor Gurney.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Oh my gosh, speeding along. No public hearings this evening. Regular calendar, none. And meeting adjourned. I want everybody to hear.
You don't have to. I can bring them back during normal business hours. We are, but it would need